I have in the house Emmanuel Nwachukwu at Emmanuel_Dele on Twitter.
At
Ima_Dele on social media. And we're discussing this FBI arrest of Nigerians. 80 of them. Before then, there was the well-publicized arrest of Invictus, Obi. What do you think about these things, Emmanuel?
It took me a few hours to be able to piece my thoughts together. I was really angry. I remember having a conversation while driving with a friend, and it was probably one of the worst driving I had because I was really angry, and it showed in my driving.
Who were you angry at?
I was angry at the people, of course, the people who were convicted of all of this, who took part in all of this, because I looked at the multiply effects on every other person who worked their ass off legitimately to earn a living, who wouldn't go through that route. And just because of your greed, you have put every other person in bad light. And while just after it, I saw a notice at a bank in Texas that said they no longer handle Western Union transfer to Nigeria. And I'm like, do you know how many families you have put through pain just because they won't be able to share income again with their families outside? And so it's sad. That's for want of words to describe it. It's really annoying.
I'd like to play the devil's advocate on behalf of Nigeria now. Why is it that, and this is not justifying anything, but why is it that when Nigerians do something bad, the amplification is on a different level? For instance, Estonia, when it comes to cyber fraud, Estonia, I've heard numbers like $200 billion in terms of money laundering and things like that. Why is there something that is wrong with the brand Nigeria that makes it so that anytime things like this happen, or is it because of the way we have these conversations, where we apart from the lambast from, in this case, the FBI and the perception itself, we actually go do the extra work of lambasting ourselves?
Too much is given, much more is expected. With all due respect to Estonia, Nigeria is a bigger country in every ramification of the world, bigger. And so in the Committee of Nations in Africa, Nigeria is a bigger player. You have more Nigerians in terms of population, both in Nigeria and outside Nigeria, than Estonia has. I'm sure Nigeria have more Nigerians in Nigeria than Estonia has, both in and out of Estonia. So it has a way of playing again. I also agree with you that we seem to be huge in terms of the conversation in the social space, in the social media space. And I also do say that we expect a whole lot from ourselves. Even those of us, especially those of us who do less, expect so much from every other person except me. So I expect Omojua to be up that way, and I allow myself to be down here. So yes, it plays a part, but I chose not to look at that. I chose to stick to the issue. We won't be having this conversation if out of 80, 78 were in Nigerians. We won't be having this conversation. So if it was 80 and there were 5 Nigerians.
Do you think there was also a missed opportunity on the side of the Nigerian government? Because now this press conference happened and it was quite a long one and it was really, really bad for Nigeria. Do you think we missed something as a government, as a people, by not at least telling our side of the story? And what's that side of the story, for instance? You could have said, this thing is very, very bad. We've been working with you guys to make this arrest, and then get to talk about Nigeria and some of the things Nigerians are doing all around the world, apart from this story that just came out.
Absolutely.
Can we tell our stories better?
Absolutely, Japheth, and I agree with you on this. I was shocked. I am still shocked that days after days, there is no press conference from the EFCC, because I'm fully aware, and the FBI did confirm that the EFCC played a huge part in all of these, the investigations.
I mean, the EFCC have been making a lot of arrests before now.
So if you played a part in getting those indictments, then the FBI shouldn't be taking all the glory. Now, again, the FBI have skewed the narrative to make it look like Nigerians are defrauding every person in the world. No, that's not what's happening. What's happening is that about 80 Nigerians in the last 3 years have been convicted of doing this. But there are indicted. But there are about 200 million Nigerians I'm sure there are tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, who are doing legitimate stuffs, who are doing stuffs that are breaking records around the world. In Nigeria, there are guys who are doing so many things. So I do agree totally that we missed, again, for the umpteenth time, for the millionth time, to tell our stories. We've allowed every other person tell our stories. We are not the only country, and this is me now playing the devil's advocate. We are not the only country where these things happen. So it should not define every one of us. I don't want it to define me. That's not who I am. So I believe the Nigerian government should have done better, change the narrative, while admitting that, yes, we have bad eggs, and we're not going to shield them, but the majority of us, the vast majority of us, are hardworking, legitimate, value-adding people.
Thank you for restating that. A Nigerian bank director sold an imaginary bank, an imaginary airport to a Brazilian, right? I think that scam is probably one of the biggest scams ever. And then you also had, I think, about 20,000 Americans already scammed this year, romance scams, email scams. I mean, I'm trying to play the devil's advocate now. Why are these scams so easy? Because you see some of these formats that the scams come in and you're like, how can anyone fall for this? Why is it so easy for these things to happen?
It's when you and I look at those formats, from where we are coming from, you laugh and they're like, why is it so easy? But over there, they're not used to that. Their modes of communication. They trust their system. And what the people have done is to masquerade as people who are part of the system. So these people trust the system. There's no reason to doubt it. Now, for those of us here in this country, even when your bank, so it's funny. So I know people who you get to transfer money to them. They get an alert. They go to the ATM to check. They go to the ATM to check. They go to the bank again to confirm that, yes, the money is there. So, no, but it's true. So, because we have grown not to trust the system, you've got to do extra to scam us. Now, that said, the bank director thing puts paid to the argument that the reason why people go into this is because the economy is bad, they are poor, they can't earn a living. No. I like to say this very clearly. You're greedy. You're greedy, you're inhumane, you are lazy, you covet things that you cannot afford. You have refused to live within your means. And people who you look up to, people who have a measure of influence on you, your parents, your friends, your religious leaders, your community leaders, have refused to tell you the truth, that there are values you must live by. You are not the first person. We are not the only country where things are so rosy. Even the countries where we call saner climes, where things are rosy, people do menial jobs. So get your hands dirty and work.
So I was working in Kenya during the week, and on entry into Kenya, they intentionally isolated the Nigerians. I was isolated. That was not funny to see. So I started to say, okay, so what's going to happen here? They started to check yellow cards. Eventually, they let some people go, and then ultimately, they collected $50 bribes from some other people. I'm already engaging the Kenyan government on this. So the question is, what role does the Nigerian government, what role does the government have to play? Because everywhere you look, even before this news came out, we seem to just get dragged in the mud, and any government can just, it seems like they can just do anything to Nigerians abroad. They can treat us anyhow. Our students are being dragged all over the place, being called criminals. Even in countries where there are criminals, they ignore the criminals and just go to Nigerians that have legitimate reasons to be in those countries. What can government do to save our image? And Nigerians too.
There's a whole lot of intergovernment relations.
You need to keep it short because time is on our side.
There's a whole lot of intergovernment relations governments has got to do to improve the laws. The government needs to be a little bit more engaging, sometimes maybe a little bit more forceful to help change the narrative. I don't feel so much for you and I that travel and come back. I feel so much for those who live in those countries.
Nigerians in the diaspora.
In diaspora, who live in those countries. And this is it, Japhet.
Thank you, Ima. I can't take more, but you've said a lot. I'm sure the government and other Nigerians know what to do as we continue to fix our image. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.